right, ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a look at notes 2.2 today, and we are talking about solving inequalities. Now, before we solve inequalities, I want you to go ahead and tackle this equation. We know it's an equation because it has an equal sign, and I want to remind you that if it has an equal sign, that means it's equal and that we have one solution. Now, I want you to use "Don't call me after midnight" to solve this equation. Pause the video, solve it, and then go back and check your answers with my work. All right, so whenever we're doing "Don't call me after midnight," the first thing I'm going to do is distribute. And I see that I have -2 times x, which is going to give me -2x. Make sure you're taking the entire number in front. And then I'm going to say -2 times -1, which gives me a +2, plus 5x equals, I'm going to distribute this 2 to 2x, which gives me 4x, and this 2 to the -1, which gives me -2. So when we think about "Don't call me after midnight," I've distributed. Can I combine like terms? Well, I'm going to look over here on the left-hand side, and I see that I have 2x and a 5x, which I can indeed combine like terms for. -2x plus 5x is going to give me 3x plus 2 equals 4x minus 2. So I've combined like terms. Do I need to move the variable to one side? Well, the answer is yes, I do. And then which variable do I move? It really doesn't matter which variable you're going to move, but I notice that I'm going to move it towards the 4, because I can see that in order to move it, I have to do the opposite, which would be subtract 3x. And when I do that, I know that 4 is bigger, so 4 minus 3 gives me 1x minus 2. Now, I don't have to write that 1 there, but you can. So the next thing I need to do is, do I need to add or subtract? Now remember, I'm still trying to get this variable by itself, this one right here. And I can add or subtract, and I'm going to add the 2 to both sides. These cancel out, and I'm left with 4 equals x. So I have a solution of 4 equals x. Now, an inequality let me rewrite that a little better. Still getting used to the new technology, guys. Thank you for your patience. So an inequality, I-N-E-Q-U-A-L-I-T-Y, which if you think about it means not equal, okay? So an inequality, a not equal, is a statement this is pretty bad. An inequality is a statement that two quantities are not equal. That's what "n" means, not equal, okay? And so we have several options here. We have less than. If we have a less than, then that means whatever is on the left is less than what's on the right, and we use an open circle. If it's less than or equal to, it means whatever is on the left is less than or equal to whatever on the right, and we used a filled in circle. Now, this is greater than. So greater than means that anything on the left, or A, is greater than B, anything on the right, and we use an open circle. Notice they can't be equal. But in this case, because it has a line underneath it, they can be equal. So A is greater than B, but it can also be equal to. So we have a few more options if it has a line underneath it. Now, something for you to remember and to keep track of is that whenever you multiply or divide both sides of an inequality by a negative, you flip or switch the inequality sign, depending on how you want to do it, okay? So let's take a look at what that actually looks like in a problem real quick. So we're going to take a look at problem number 1. Now your notes are all filled in for you on this problem. So what I expect you to do is I expect you to watch and then ask, well, you can't ask questions because it's a video, but watch and make sure you're understanding every step. If you're not, then go back. So anytime I'm solving a solution or an inequality, I am "Don't call me after midnight" is the acronym that I'm going to use, okay? So I don't have anything I can distribute, and I don't have anything that combines. I don't need to move a variable because I only have one and it's on the left. Notice it's that f, okay? What I'm trying to get by itself is this positive 4f. So I need to add or subtract, and the answer is yes. So this is a positive 160. So to move it or to cancel it out, I subtract 160 from both sides, which leaves me with 4f is less than or equal to 340. Now I still want to get f by itself. I still want to get this f by itself, but I can't right now. I mean, it's not by itself right now, but I notice it has a coefficient in front of it, and 4 and f side by side means multiply. So to undo that, I'm going to divide, and 340 divided by 4 gives me 85. Now, the inequality stayed the same all the way through this problem, because I didn't multiply or divide by a negative. So I know that f is less than 85. Now that little sentence seems stupid right now, but we've discovered it really makes a difference in how kids understand it. So I want you to go ahead and write that down so that you're thinking through. What I'm doing is I'm shading numbers less than 85. Now when you're shading it on your number line, all you have to do is show us 0 and then the number, and that way we know what direction you're going in. And that's it, you're done. So just to recap, we're using Don't Call Me After Midnight to isolate the variable. We didn't need to distribute, we didn't need to combine, we didn't need to multiply. We did have to add or subtract, and we did have to multiply or divide. Now you should be able to do number 2 on your own, and you guys are doing really well. The last test showed that. So I do want you to pause the video and try to do it before I finish it, and then see how you do. And let's see if you find anything that's a problem here, okay? So pause it, try it, take your fail attempt, that means first attempt at learning. All right, so I'm going to talk some organization. I have some students that draw a line down there to help them remember what they're doing. That might be something that you need to do. Other students will box the entire term, which I encourage you to do. Do I have any parentheses? No, so I don't need to distribute. Do I combine like terms? I don't have any. Do I need to move the variable? No. Do I need to add or subtract? The answer is yes. I'm trying to get this term by itself, so I'm going to subtract 21 from both sides. I get negative 14 is less than 2t. Now, again, I'm trying to isolate this variable, that t. I know that's an ugly t, but just bear with me. 2 and t side by side means 2 times t. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. Now, I end up with negative 7 is less than t. Negative 7 is less than t. So negative 7 is less than t. The other way to look at that is t is greater than negative 7, okay? So if I put the t over here and the negative 7 over here, my inequality is facing the t and pointing to the negative 7, and it would still need to stay that way. But these two inequalities are the same answer. So negative 7 is less than t, or t is greater than negative 7, however you wish to do it. So I'm going to show 0, I'm going to show negative 7. Do I use an open or closed circle in this problem? Will you tell me on 3, 2, 1? That's correct. It's going to be opal. It's going to be open. So t is greater than negative 7. That means I'm shading all the numbers greater or bigger than negative 7. So far, so good. Not hard, right? All right, so let's go take a look at anything that used this rule yet. We haven't seen anything that said when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative, you flip the inequality. So the fact that now we're turning it up a little bit. Not a whole lot. We're still going to use Don't Call Me After Midnight. On this case, we have a distribution problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the negative 2 to the x and the negative 2 to the negative 4. So I have negative 2 is greater than 7x minus 2x plus 8. So negative 2 times x gave me the negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 4 gave me the positive 8. I'm going to combine like terms. So I have negative 2 is greater than 5x plus 8. I don't need to move the variable. I do need to add or subtract. Remember, we're trying to get this entire term by itself, which means that 8 is in my way. So I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And I'm left with negative 10 is greater than 5x. And then I need to multiply or divide. So I'm going to multiply or divide here. And when I take a look at 5x, I know that that's 5 times x. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5, and I get negative 2 is greater than x. Now I can write it as negative 2 is greater than x, or let's write that in words. Negative 2 is greater than x. Or I can say x is less than negative 2. So how I would write that was I would keep the x and the negative 2. I look at the inequality. It's pointing to the x and opening up to the negative 2. And so these statements are the same. Now we need to graph it. So I'm going to show a 0. Oh, I should have done that in a different place. Let me erase that. It doesn't really matter where you do it. I'm picky. Show a 0, show a negative 2. Is it going to be an open or closed circle? It's going to be an open circle. And is x less than negative 2? So I'm going to shade the numbers that are less than negative 2. Now, some people need to write down numbers in there so they can see that. That's up to you to decide if you want to do it. Now, so far, when we look at questions, we having that out should tell you that I'm expecting you to see that on this next problem. Now, problem number 4 is all filled in. So all you have to do is follow along with me and make sure you're understanding every step. So I want you to literally follow along and make sure you're understanding what's going on. So again, don't call me after midnight. The distribute, I would say negative 5 times x, which would give me negative 5x. Negative 5 times 2 would be negative 10. And then I write down everything else that's left. So I do have a distribute. I can combine like terms. I have a negative 5x and a negative 3x. I'm not really sure how that's going to show up on the video, but we'll see. And what happens when I combine those is I end up with negative 8x. And I write down the minus 10. Bring down the 18. And there's no reason for me to flip the inequality yet. Do I need to move the variable? No. Can I add or subtract? The answer is yes. Now, keep in mind that we're trying to get this term isolated, or this term by itself. So I want to move this negative 10. So I'm going to add 10 to both sides. And I get 28 is greater than negative 8x, because this adds out. Now I need to get x by itself. I'm still trying to isolate the variable. This time what's different is I have a negative 8 in front. So that means I'm going to divide by negative 8. And if I do it to one side, I do it to the other. Now in my class, whenever they see something divide by negative 8, okay, I set an alarm off just to remind them. So for those of you that are watching the video, this is about to get really loud, okay? So we're dividing by negative 8. And what should happen in your head is you should hear, woo, 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 flip the inequality, okay? So when I divide by negative 8, I get negative 3/5, but this inequality has to switch or flip because I divide it. So now I know negative 3.5 is less than x, or I can rewrite it x is greater than negative 3.5. Now, I don't want you to get confused. Whenever we're dividing by a negative, we call that a flip. Whenever we're just rewriting it, that's a switch, okay? We're not changing anything, we're just rewriting it. Just like when we had equations, we could say x equals 4, or we could say 4 equals x. We're doing the same thing, but we're not doing any math, not doing anything different. So I'm going to show 0, and I'm going to show negative 3.5. This is an open circle, and I'm going to shade to the right. Only, what did I do wrong here? Did you guys see that mistake? God, I hope you did. Yeah, let's try that again, shall we? This says 3.5, so it's an open circle at negative 3.5, and then shade to the right, all the numbers greater than. All right, let's take a look at number 5. Now, you know enough right now that you should be able to work ahead of me. So I want you to use don't call me after midnight. And what I'd really like to see you do is I'd really like to see you do this problem without my help, and then go watch the video to see how you did. Okay, so ideally you would work this problem by yourself and then see how you did. So pause the video, go work it, and then come back. So I'm going to distribute negative 1/3. I get negative 1/3 x. Take negative 1/3 times 3. Do that in your calculator. You get minus 1 greater than or equal to negative 5. So I've distributed. I don't have anything I can combine. I don't need to move the variable. I do need to add or subtract. So remember that we're trying to isolate this variable, which means we're trying to get x by itself. That means I need to move the minus 1. The opposite of subtracting 1 is adding 1. So I add 1 to both sides, and I get negative 1/3 x is greater than or equal to negative 4. I'm still trying to isolate this variable, which means I'm still trying to get it by itself. That means the coefficient, or the number in front, has got to move. Now that is negative 1/3 times x. Just like if I said 3x, and that would be 3 times x, all I've done is made it a fraction, so it's still multiplying. So what I'm going to do is divide by negative 1/3. If I do it to one side, I do it to the other. And I'm left with x. Whoa! Woo, 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 woo! What's the alarm for? Well, you got to flip. Why do we have to flip? Because we multiplied or divided both sides by a negative. So that means instead of writing greater than, I'm going to flip it and say less than. When I plug negative 4 divided by negative 1/3 in your calculator, you get 12. I don't know why I wrote 13, because I said 12. So let's try that again. So it's 12. So I know that x is less than or equal to 12. So I've got 0 and I've got 12. It's going to be a closed circle. That means it's filled in. I know it's filled in because there's a line under here. And it says shade all the values less than 12. So I'm going to shade towards the 0 or numbers that are less than 12. Oh, number 6 looks rough. It's really not. We just threw a whole bunch of decimals in there to try to mess with you. And anytime we're solving an equation or an inequality, it's don't call me after midnight. We do have some distributing to do on this problem. I want to go ahead and start you off with the first step, but then after that, I want you to take it on your own. So 0.24 times 5 is going to give me 1.2z, and negative 0.24 times negative 15 is going to give me negative 3.6, less than or equal to 0.3 times 6 is going to be 1.8, 0.3 times 12 is going to be plus 3.6. Now, do I have a variable on the right-hand side? I want you guys to notice that. Do we have any variables over here? Yeah, the answer is no, we don't. Okay. So, was that 1.8? I hope so. I didn't mean to erase it. So that means I can combine like terms. So these are the same. So I get 1.2z minus 3.6 is less than or equal to, and when I combine those terms, I get 5.4. I'm going to add 3.6 to both sides. 1.2z is less than or equal to 5.4 plus 3.6 is 9. Again, I'm still trying to isolate this z and get the z by itself. So I need to multiply or divide by 1.2. So I'm going to divide by 1.2. Now we divided, but are we dividing by a negative? Nope, we're not dividing by a negative, so there's no reason for an alarm and there's no reason for us to switch it. So I have z is less than or equal to 7.5. So I'm putting that in my calculator and it's giving me 7.5. So I know z is less than or equal to 7.5. So I mark my 0. I mark 7.5. This line underneath tells me I have to have a filled in circle. And we're doing less than, so we're going to shade to the left. Less than, so we're going to shade to the left. And there we go. That's your notes 2-2. You do have homework. You have assignment 2-2 that needs to be completed and ready for class the next day. All right, if you have any questions, we're available for tutoring. You can watch the video again, and we would love to answer your questions. Have a great night.